Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Your Mark on the World show. I'm your host, Devin Thorpe, and this episode is being produced for Forbes, where I am a contributor covering social entrepreneurship and impact investing. One of my favorite topics is crowdfunding, and we have assembled some of the world's experts on crowdfunding to talk about a really pertinent issue, and that is that 2.5 years after the Jobs Act passed, creating and legalizing, authorizing crowdfunding for equity and other investments in the United States, the SEC has yet to issue final rules. So we have with us today on our little panel, we have Ron Miller, the CEO and founder of Start Engine. We also have Sara Hanks, the CEO of CrowdCheck, Jason Best, the CEO of Crowdfund Capital Advisors, and Greg Parker, who is the CEO and founder of Indie Crowdfunder. Sara, gentlemen, thank you all for joining me today. It's great to have you here for this discussion.
Thank you.
Ron, maybe we could start with you. You really are the catalyst for this discussion today in that you noticed that the SEC was dragging its feet. You created a platform specifically designed to take advantage of the rules governed by the Jobs Act, and so you've launched a grassroots campaign to get the SEC to issue the rules that they're required to issue. Tell us a little bit about the impetus for what you're doing and how it's going.
Sure. Well, thanks, Devin. Appreciate that. So basically the background on it is that I noticed after February and kind of waiting patiently, and suddenly when it came across to early July, and I hadn't yet seen the SEC finalize the rules, nor was there any commitment by the chair to actually put this on the agenda to get the final rules complete. I then realized that it was the time to really come forward in a supportive way to the SEC to say, gosh, they've done a great job of balancing investor protection against the efficient formation of capital. Came out with a 600-page ruling, and yet when we can go live as a Title III platform. So not seeing much action, I then began to rally the industry and put together as many people as I could, both investors, issuers, and others who were stakeholders and knowledgeable people here to basically support the SEC to say, hey, guys, you've done a great job with the draft rules. And if you simply just incorporate a few of the comments that were made in the open comment period, we as an industry are ready to go. And we will solve for many of the problems that are out there, and we will create a robust and effective industry that will raise capital for literally hundreds of companies within months of when the SEC allows us to go live. So that was the impetus for it. As we stand today, I've been successful in getting over 50 letters submitted to the SEC from those parties. And I personally, after speaking with many of the commissioners' offices, as well as knowledgeable people in D.C., as well as the chair's office as recently as yesterday, I have good reason to believe that we will see the SEC finalize these rules within the next 2 months.
Well, that's great news. That's great news. Sara, I'd like you to just take a minute and speak to the readiness of the industry and what the real timeline is for implementation once rules are issued, because I think you as an attorney and running the firm that you run, CrowdCheck, focused on compliance, you're probably as well situated as anyone to address the readiness of the industry to actually spool up and comply with the SEC's final rules.
Sure. Well, I mean, the first thing to bear in mind is that we will have 60 days notice before everything starts. By law, any SEC rules have to have an implementation period, and it's always X days after the publication of final rules in the Federal Register. Since this is a ruling that affects small businesses, you get 60 days instead of the usual 30. So within 60 days, what all of us have to do is take the final rules, make sure that we understand them, make sure our processes are reflected on our platforms, our educational processes, our due diligence processes, whatever, and then be ready to implement them. I think that's going to be pretty easy for most of us because there's not going to be that many changes. The SEC didn't have a lot of leeway because of the statute was so very, very explicit about what the rules had to be, there were a few things that the SEC could add. As Ron has mentioned, there's a few things we really want them to change in the final rules, but assuming that those things are done, the platforms are ready, the investors are ready, the issuers are ready, hopefully everybody else is ready, and we'll have 60 days to finalize it all. I'm hoping that we'll be able to replace Ron's release the rules hashtag with crowdfunding by Christmas. There's a new one for you, Ron. So let's hope that that's, and like I say, since it's 60 days, sometime by October, and I don't think it's crazy to expect that it will happen by then, we could be crowdfunding by Christmas. The one thing that could be a bit of a delay is FINRA. We have to make sure that that they are ready to register all of the crowdfunding portals, but they have said publicly a number of times that they are ready to, they're working parallel with the SEC. So crowdfunding by Christmas, new hashtag, I don't know.
I hope so. I hope so. Jason, I wonder if you would take just a minute and talk a little bit about some of the issues you see with the SEC's draft rules. What are the big things you hope they'll change in the final rules from their draft?
Well, for us, there are several things. One, the limits on liability for platforms, to allow there to be limits on liability for platforms. Number two, the opportunity for changes in the audit rules, so we could raise the level of investment that would enable people to not have to have a full audit at $500,000. That is rather cost prohibitive at this point. We will probably see the cost of those come down, just as we've already seen the costs of escrow and other services related to accredited investor crowdfunding, or Title II of the Jobs Act, already start to come down. And then third, it's really about offering this opportunity. This is a longer-term wish. This isn't going to happen in the next 60 days. But there'll be raising the limits of the amount of money that one can raise through a Title III offering.
Yeah. There was certainly some good news in the draft rules, as I recall, as well. Certainly the opportunity to do simultaneous crowdfunding and Reg D 506C offerings was a huge win, if you will, in the draft rules. I hope that's preserved as well. Greg, I wonder if you'd talk a little bit about how you see crowdfunding impacting the film and entrepreneurial community that you're so deep in.
No, that's a very good question. For the film community, I think, especially around Title III, crowdfunding is explosive. We've got, of course, your reward-based crowdfunding, but the ability to offer equity to the projects or to the fans that actually watch and view these movies, I think is phenomenal. With the average movie or independent film being somewhere along the line of a budget of $1 million, you can see Title III fits in very, very well. We're also really looking forward to Title IV, which is Reg A+, as some have called that, given the fact of its higher limit of $50 million. A lot of our projects do tend to go somewhere along the lines of 3 to 5, sometimes even 10 to $20 million, as well as film slates and things to that effect, where you get more than one film, so the investors can minimize their risk by investing over several movies. So we're actually, the impact on that is significant, and we're actually very much looking forward to it, and Ron has done a fantastic job.
Well, Ron, tell us a little bit about what you're doing to prepare to comply with all these rules. I think the SEC, and I'm just projecting, I don't know this, but I suspect the SEC worries about your ability to comply. If you were speaking to the SEC right now, and I hope you are, tell them how ready you are to comply with the rules.
Sure. Well, first thing, Devin, that we did was we took statute, and importantly, we took the draft rule, and the very first thing we did, do not pass go, was to create what we call a requirements document in order to build our platform. And that requirements document was built specifically to the requirements that were set forth in the SEC draft rule. I agree with Sara that the final rules, while I think they'll have some changes, and I certainly hope they're going to incorporate the changes that were brought up by CIFRA, even the ones that were mentioned by Jason, I think those are very important. I think that on the whole, there's not going to be a lot of major changes. So the first thing we did was built our entire tech platform consistent with those rules. The second thing that we did is we've hired the best that we can, legal counsel for our firm, to review each step. Third thing is we're internally building a system, a documented system of compliance that each issuer we list on the form will have to go through a rigorous process, well documented, and those documents, of course, are historically archived to ensure that we can prove that each step was followed in the manner that the SEC prescribed. So those are just some of the steps. The other things is that we've been able to successfully incorporate some of the other services, like CrowdCheck, for example, is the firm intending on using to deliver the background checks on the issuers that are required by the rules that the SEC developed. So we're reliant on I guess what I'll call affiliate service firms like CrowdCheck that have deep knowledge and expertise in the model rules, provide to us the services necessary to effectuate the campaigns.
Well, it really is a robust ecosystem that's developing, and Sara, you kind of represent that at its best. I wonder if you would address a little bit the next steps, though, as an experienced securities attorney. Of course, you know, and FINRA has already issued some draft rules around its implementation. What do you expect the FINRA rules to be, and how will they be implemented, and what's the timeline there, and does that threaten your crowdfunding by Christmas timeline?
I really hope not, and you know, FINRA, if you're out there, I'm relying on you not to delay anything. I don't think they will. The thing that is a huge challenge for FINRA is that they have now to develop a compliance, regulatory, and inspection and examination system for a thing that's never existed before, these crowdfunding portals. They know broker-dealers, registered broker-dealers, there is an established set of rules that apply to them. It's really easy to just add, yes, we're going to do crowdfunding if you already have an existing broker-dealer license. But as the SEC calls them, funding portals, crowdfunding portals, are a limited purpose broker-dealer. So they are going to have a separate, smaller rule book and a separate, lighter examination and inspection system. I am assuming, because you know we've heard it from a lot of the FINRA guys, that they're working side by side with the SEC. But they're going to have a real challenge when the SEC says, let's say, you know, October 1st, let's say that they adopt the rules and we've got 60 days. There'll then be 60 days to get the broker-dealers with their additional business paperwork, and then also register all of the broker-dealers in just a couple of months. That's going to be a huge challenge. I hope they're able to do it, and of course, you know, we're as an industry, we are here to help. If they need anything ahead of time, hey FINRA, let us know what would help, because we want to be crowdfunding by Christmas.
So, Sara, what is the process that you anticipate for someone who is already, for a firm that's already registered as a broker-dealer, enabling them to do crowdfunding? Probably a small step or a big step? What do you think, in terms of the regulation and FINRA compliance?
It'll be a fairly small step. They'll just have to add that as an additional line of business. I mean, I don't want to downplay it, because any paperwork, especially in securities regulation land, is always burdensome, but it will not be as much of a burden for existing broker-dealers as it will be for funding portals. And one thing that I think all of us in the industry are hoping is that it won't be a two-stage process, because that would be sad. You know, if the existing broker-dealers were given their permission to go ahead with crowdfunding before the funding portals stand up, that would be kind of not what crowdfunding was all about. So I'm hoping this will be a parallel process.
Good point. Jason, you have been literally traveling around the world on task, thoughtfully reviewing the potential impact of crowdfunding on a global basis. I wonder if we could get you to just focus for a minute on the U.S., because that's really what we're talking about, and tell us what you think the impact of Title III crowdfunding can potentially be.
Well, I mean, the thing that we talked about in our work that we did, we issued a paper with UC Berkeley last year about the potential impact over the first 2 to 3 years of crowdfunding in the United States, and we thought it had a $4 billion opportunity to deliver funding to companies. Roughly, conservatively, if we were able to deliver, just 50 companies per state in the United States, 2,500 companies across the United States, that would be a massive, massive capital influx and opportunities for businesses to do that. I think 50 companies per state is extremely achievable and something that we will absolutely see. I think that just a couple of points on your previous topics. There has never been a part of the securities business, to my knowledge, that has been as focused and as aligned with investors and with the regulators on getting it right. This is something brand new. This is one of the biggest changes in securities regulations in 80 years. We realize that this is a large leap of faith, frankly, for regulators to take, because this is all very new. And so we want this to be a robust, long-lived, and successful market. And so everyone is very concerned about creating investor protections and a stable and growing securities business. And that's why this ecosystem of crowdfunding that we talk about is so critically important. Companies like Sara's, like others in this space, that are creating this opportunity so that funding portals focus in their area of expertise, and there'll be other companies that are created around it. Just like we saw in the online advertising market back in the early 2000s, there was a whole ecosystem of companies that was created around advertising platforms. You'll see the same thing that's already occurring around crowdfunding platforms.
Yeah, fantastic. Greg, I wonder, as we think about crowdfunding in the United States, how you think that this might have an impact on entrepreneurs who are somewhat disconnected from traditional sources of capital. That might be as a result of geography, it might be as a result of race, it may be a result of gender. Do you see crowdfunding having an impact on improving access to capital for entrepreneurs?
I do. We've seen, well, not only crowdfunding itself, we've seen that crowdfunding has changed the way not only social media works, but it changes the way social environments work from the standpoint of now, you can crowdfund to get a water main in Africa or something to this effect. The social implications of crowdfunding are enormous. And I think that is also going to be prevalent not in the United States but also abroad. We've seen crowdfunding in China grow. In the UK, equity crowdfunding is exploding. Even Canada is starting their move toward this as well. So the crowdfunding in and of itself has taken hold in a global scale. And I do believe that the United States is kind of, in my mind, a little slow on the draw, because all the other countries have moved forward with this, except in the area of donation base or reward base, Kickstarter and these things, where you have from our end, the films, the movie, the music, everyone can really be a part of something. So I think now that is really where it's taking its root and taking its hold, and we're really just blessed to be a part of it. I mean, it's fantastic to really see how this thing is really growing and becoming a social movement in and of itself.
Yeah. Now, I want to do a quick lightning round with all of you to wrap up. So I want you to tell us, each of you, how you would like people to engage with you, because there will be people watching this who are going to want to connect with you. They're going to want to ask you questions. They're going to want to learn from you. They're going to want to support what you're doing. They're going to want to invest in your deals. Who knows? How do you want people to engage with you? Quick lightning round, 30 seconds each. Let's start with Ron, then Sara, then Jason, then Greg.
Great. Well, thank you, Devin. Again, it's ron@startengine.com. That's the email address, and I'm happy to help provide any information that I have about the timing and synchronization of the SEC and FINRA releasing the rules, and so that we can begin moving forward. The most important thing that I'd like to ask the audience to do at this point is, to the extent that you are intent on crowdfunding either a campaign or a cause, either way, if it's an equity-based deal, I would like to ask you to submit a formal comment to the SEC, just briefly describing the rules with the comments that were submitted, and so that we can get moving right away.
Great, thanks, Ron. Sara?
Okay, I can be reached at sarah@crowdcheck.com. Give me a call if you've got any questions on any aspect of compliance or due diligence. And if you're interested in hearing about our services, what we're offering is complete issuer compliance, disclosure, due diligence, background checks, filing with the SEC, the whole package. You don't need any lawyers. All you need is us.
Great. Jason?
Sure. At CrowdCap Advisor in the lower third is how you can follow me on Twitter. I manage my own account, and I'm very responsive if you've got questions. Also, you can reach me at jason@theccagroup.com. You can visit our website at theccagroup.com.
And Greg?
Alrighty, that email address is gparker@indycrowdfunder.com. Come on up, because we believe that everyone should own a piece. You work hard for your money, so own a piece of the content you watch. So come on up and actually be an investor in major motion picture projects.
Fantastic. Well, listen, all of you, I thank you very much for your time, and wish you success in your efforts, and especially join you in inviting the SEC to issue the rules. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Devin.
All righty, let's do some good.